We'll start with John and then go to Mike.
So, Coach, you've got no doubt about it, the consistent refrain that you control what you can control and everything else kind of takes care of itself. What was it like to see your team put in the effort it took to finish off the regular season with a series win at South Carolina, and then that was what they could control, and then afterward be rewarded with that East Division crown?
Yeah, it was. You say that phrase so often that you try and live by it. So then it was exhilarating for the guys. I mean, literally, couldn't get Evan Russell to calm down in left field. So just on a really good high and a great feeling about things for a lot of different reasons. And then when something out of your control happens to your benefit, it's almost kind of like, surreal is an easy word, but you almost kind of don't know how to handle it. And then as time went on and it sunk in that our guys accomplished something that, hadn't been done in a while, it's a pretty cool deal. It's great for Vol fans and anyone that's been a part of the program before. And I think it's something that our guys can, take a great deal of confidence in, that if they can finish first in anything in the SEC, even if it's just being the best team on one particular weekend, that really means you can kind of accomplish anything in the college baseball world.
Tony, you guys don't have a lot of Hoover experience on this roster, just given that last year didn't happen. What do you tell these guys about what this experience is like and what the postseason baseball is kind of like in general?
Yeah, oddly enough, the thing we stressed is kind of all that comes with the rules of the postseason. You no longer have the flexibility of going 2 minutes over your batting practice time or starting early or, getting 8 tickets when you have buddies coming in and things like that. So this tournament is a great precursor for what regionals can bring to you. And it's a lot of distractions. On a much, much, much grander stage with Super Bowl week, you hear all the time about those guys have the off week to get all the riffraff out of the way or whatever you want to, label it, and then focus on the game. And ultimately what we want for our guys is to continue to play well. So we kind of presented all the peripherals that come with not just Hoover, but postseason baseball in general, and then play your best. And the one thing about playing your best down here is you're going to have to handle the heat and the humidity, and it's been a mild spring. So that'll be a challenge as always for every team here, but in particular this year.
We'll go to Ben and then Vince.
Tony, you mentioned yesterday that you didn't want to overtax your pitching staff, particularly Blade and Chad, but Blade has been just so awesome the last month or so and getting better by each start. How do you walk that fine line about wanting to kind of keep him in routine and keep that momentum going that he has built, but also not taxing his arm?
Sure. No, you want him to compete this week. There's no doubt about it. If you can stay in that mode that he's been in, and you'd like to label it perfectly or set it up where it's the same day he's always been throwing and the same amount of pitches and have a successful outing, but that's not the world we live in. And arguably the best outing of the year for him, he lost or took the L, in the Arkansas game. So it's not going to be pretty in the postseason. And again, that's something we talked about with our guys is be prepared to do things that are outside of the norm. And for him, he already knows he may come in relief in this tournament. Other guys know that as well. Relievers may start, starters may relieve. But the bottom line is we do want to keep him active without, as you said, overtaxing him. And I think it is a fine line, but when you're blessed with a kid like Blade who just wants to compete to a point where it's kind of scary sometimes for us that are around him, that line gets thicker. And there's a lot more room for error, I guess is the easier way to say it.
If I could follow up real quick, I'm curious as to what the benefit would be to bringing Blade or Chad out of the bullpen. Is that to help prepare for regionals, or is that just simply to try and win any particular game at Hoover?
Just to get him to pitch. I don't know if that's the politically correct thing or the right thing to say if the players hear that, but push comes to shove. Would like to see the guys that we're going to lean on the most in the regional get action in the tournament. But again, it's a tournament. So I don't know if it's tournament or tournament. I'm going to have to go to John Wilkerson after this, but St. Louis boy says tournament, and that means chaos will prevail at all times. So you roll with it, and you want to win as many games as you can. And we hope we're to the point where we got to use a position player, Drew Gilbert, to pitch.
Sonny, with the uniqueness of the stadium and this SEC tournament, what are the traits of your team that you think could potentially be favorable in this kind of setting?
I think the fact that, it's an offense that is pretty diverse. Their portfolio is as diverse as you'd want your stock portfolio to be. I mean, we've done things where we've socked the ball out of the park. We've played small ball. We've hustled. We've done, just kind of grind on the starter a little bit. We've done a variety of things to score, keep ourselves in games as it relates to the position players. And, Frank's guys are super reliable. And so on the offensive end of things, I think if the park is playing big like it normally does, we have ways to score or stay in the game. And then, again, in this setting, games can take on crazy twists. I think these kids have a way of kind of adapting to their environment on the offensive and defensive side. And then Frank's guys, you know what you're going to get. And if we get deep into that bullpen, or again, we're fortunate enough to play long enough where you got to start using some guys that aren't household names, they're going to be under his tutelage. They're going to be prepared.
We'll go to Ryan next and then back to John.
I want to ask you about Will Heflin. I'm kind of curious what your initial thoughts were on him when you got the job and you're meeting him and seeing him pitch for the first time, and where has he grown the most, maybe even specifically from that 2019 season to now?
Right. Well, I hated him because he beat us when we came with Arkansas to Tennessee, and he actually hit a ball down the first baseline to beat us in the first game that we played against Tennessee. And then we won the next game. We only played two. We split. So I remembered him as a two-way guy and a guy who beat us. But, things change when you I don't know what it's like to be an MLB guy that gets traded. But when you're wearing the same color and the same logo, you find a way to kind of bond to one another. And with him, it's easy. He's a mature kid. He's easygoing outside of the uniform. Inside the uniform, like I said, because he's a two-way guy, we knew we were getting an athlete. He really honed into the pitching side of things, and he was crucial. I mean, we went out and got Crochet, but, left-handed pitching is so valuable to every program, and we knew he was going to be crucial for us, and that's why we used him in so many different ways. And I think the fact that Garrett alike, some of these guys had to go through tough times and were asked to do a ton of things outside of their routine. I think it made them stronger, and it made them more able to handle any circumstances thrown at them. And whatever the combination is, Will has developed into a phenomenal representative of the program, but also a guy you can trust, with any game.
With your tournament experience, do you feel that there's ever not, I wouldn't say overconfidence, but the fact that you are going to open with a team that you've won at their place, took 2 out of 3, Tuscaloosa, as well as Columbia. And I'm just wondering, do you feel you have to remind anybody that don't think that just because you won 2, you're going to get the next one? Or do you love the fact that this team has done such a good job of just focusing on the day?
No, I would like to think that theme will hold true. We'll keep our thumb on them, but at this point in the season, there's more players than coaches. They've got control of this thing, and they seem to roll with that theme of focusing on the day. But with Alabama, with South Carolina, I could bring up other teams too. I don't think they forget about the fact that it was one swing and the thing goes differently. I mean, Sean Hunley's out there composed and gets the last out at Alabama with both dugouts sweating like crazy. And then the exact same at South Carolina. So many other battles we had against other teams. And maybe there's some teams that got us too by an inch, not a mile. So I don't think these kids forget that stuff. And they realize too, in the postseason, you can throw it all out the window and just expect to get everybody's best punch.
All right, we'll go back to Mike and then back to Ben.
Yeah, Tony, with Jake, is he as quietly good as a player that you've coached? I mean, it just seems like he just kind of goes about his business, puts up his numbers, and doesn't really seem like he gets a lot of attention for it.
Yeah, in the winter, I stopped by a facility and there was no coaching or, I said hi to Jake, but, there was a group of guys training at this hitting facility, and some of them were in our league. And there were some freakish athletes and hitters in this little hitting rotation. And I grabbed a guy that owned the place. I said, if you walk through this thing, you would easily say the worst guy or the least impressive guy is Jake. But if you showed up to 5 or 6 baseball games, the funny thing is Jake's a better baseball player than all these guys. I know that. And I think that's truly the case. He's someone that usually when you have a team that's doing some things, you look at why. And there's usually guys like Liam is our leadoff hitter. That's a guy, he's a leader. And with Jake, he kind of represents what a lot of our guys are, is maybe not the sexiest thing on paper or your poster boy at this or that, but if you come and watch them play 5 or 6 games, you'll appreciate the things they do on and off the field, and you'll see the things that lead to success. So I think he kind of embodies that.
And as a quick follow, if I can, your guys' power numbers have upticked kind of in the last month or so, particularly Luke. What do you think has led to some of the maybe more slugging that we've seen from them?
Yeah, I mean, maybe a little less Italian craziness in the dugout, or whatever it is, the collar's loosened up a little bit, you know? So that's my way of saying I think they're kind of more settled into, you know, being who they are. I don't think guys are shining or hot or anything like that. I think guys were restricting their success a little bit individually early in the season, but now they've kind of loosened up and they're just playing ball. Maybe it's school being out, warm weather, a combination of things. I think a lot of times at Tennessee, since we got the job, no one felt like we had any room for error, because we can't fall back on, well, we hosted a regional last year, we did this, or we always kind of come around. We don't have any of that stuff to fall back on. So we've always felt like there's such a small room for error. And this year, maybe those players felt like that we got to break through. I mean, this is our one chance to do this. And while they were finding ways to win as a team, it was a lot of tension individually. And I think now it's like, hey, we won some games, so let's relax and play and just kind of find out how good we actually are. And so I think that's why you see some of those numbers.
Credit to Ryan for this stat, but you all are one of 2 teams that had the same Friday, Saturday, Sunday, game 1 through game 3 starting rotation all throughout conference play this season. How significant is that, and how beneficial is it going into postseason play to have that kind of experience, I guess?
Yeah. Who's the other team? Do you know?
I think Ryan can chime in. I think he said A&M, and then Mississippi State was close.
Y'all were actually
Okay.
the only one, actually.
Oh, well, see,
Mississippi State was
Okay.
the closest. Y'all were.
See, every now and then we got to put you guys on the spot, because you always put us on the spot. That's my attempt at a joke. But
it was
anyhow, thank you. I appreciate that. Anyhow, if there are fans listening, they might think, well, yeah, you kind of want to figure out your starting rotation, and that's who it should be. To a college coach to have that, it's nuts. Frank and I talked. I can't ever remember never going through a whole season where you keep it true to who it is. But even in just a conference season, you know, the 9 or 10 weeks you would play conference, I don't remember that ever happening for any team that I've been a part of as a player or a coach. So it's tremendous. I think it just provides stability. And, you know, things that you guys might say about coaches, you know, keep them on their toes or press the right buttons, those types of things. Yeah, that might be something. But what I think is better for kids is stability and showing up to the stadium and kind of knowing what you're getting, rather than a guessing game or things being volatile or, you know, getting twisted upside down on them. And I think our players and those kids in particular, knowing their routine, knowing what they're going to get, it helps. It helps performance. But I tell you who it helps more than anybody is the coaches, to sleep at night and to plan when you have the reliability that those guys have provided.
All right, we'll take 2 more to finish the things off. We'll go to Vince, and then we'll finish with Mike.
Tony, can you share some of the things that Connor Pavoloni does defensively in helping your pitching staff out, whether it's stealing strikes or getting you in the right pitches, calming guys down? Can you talk about that aspect of the game that maybe isn't as visible to most that watch?
Sure. There's a flow there that you can't, the only way it comes is with time. You know, Opitz is freakish back there, but even as a freshman, I'm sure there was times where he had to kind of get in a groove with things. You know, the kid from South Carolina was really good back there, the Kentucky kid, this past weekend. But there's time that it takes for a catcher to build rapport with all the pitchers and then the pitching coach too, to keep a flow going in the game and for there to be a rhythm and everybody trust them when there's a runner at third and, you know, trust signs when there's a runner at second, when you're mixing them up and things like that. The only thing that can help make that happen is time and repetition. And so while Pav is very talented, like a lot of these catchers in the SEC, the best catchers in the SEC are the ones with experience. And it's the experience of knowing your pitchers, knowing your defense, the hitters that are coming up to the plate, and then that pitching kind of plan. And so all that has been ingrained in Pav with his time with us. And then in his time with us, he has earned the right for any player to have his back. I mean, the guys know that he's worked as hard as anybody. He's somebody they want to play well for. And when they're pitching to him or they're playing defense behind him or they're hitting behind him in the order, there's a little extra intangible there that kind of, you know, he's saying it. I didn't listen to the interview, but I know he's talking about the guys rallying behind each other when he got interviewed post South Carolina. Well, yeah, dude, that's because you're Connor. The way Pav is, you want to rally around him. And so he helps kind of make that a cyclical thing or whatever the right way to say it is. And so those are two things that really, really stand out. And there's more to list off too, but he really helps the flow of the game. And then when you show up to the park and you look to your right and you see Rucker, you want to win. And you look to your left and you see Pav, you want to do whatever it takes to win.
Kind of a two-parter, both focused on bullpen. How valuable is a guy like Sean Hunley? I think he's got 7 wins and 7 saves, and just the way you guys have used him. And then from an overall bullpen perspective, as you head into the postseason, have you done anything differently to get more guys ready, given that you might have to expand the bullpen come regionals and things like that?
You know, we've kept guys active and, you know, maybe at times it looks foolish or even like there's 2 outs in an inning and the guy on the mound is cruising and we make a switch. There's a little bit of playing the long game there. So we've kept guys active in practice and, you know, I think they've gotten everything they need because you can't replicate Sewell coming out of the pen and having to face one of the best hitters in the country with runners at second and third and the roof blowing off the stadium. I mean, you can't do anything in practice or anything in a non-SEC game that's going to make that realistic. So they've gotten what they need. I think we've put a lot of extra time into the park. Frank has a personal relationship with all those guys. So we've kind of kept consistent throughout the year with what we need to do. And honestly, I hate putting pressure on kids, but it's kind of on them. If they get the opportunity, then they need to go out there and pitch like they can and not overthink the moment. But with Sean, I'm sure there's exceptions. I always kind of try and throw out other examples with other teams or programs. But, man, you think back to a lot of things like Coastal Carolina winning a World Series. They had a guy out of the pen. Forgive me, I don't know his name. And UCLA had a submarine guy named Bird. For great teams like the SEC champs with Kevin Kopps, I mean, you kind of have to have a guy like that. And again, I'm sure there's an exception, but it's tough to do what we did to win a division in the best conference in the country. You kind of need a guy like that. So that's the easiest way for me to try and overstate how important it is to have Sean on the mound. And then I would always understate how fun it is to have Sean around just as a dude. He's a quirky fella.
All right. Thanks, Coach. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate you.